welcome to my channel. If you haven't already watched it, I suggest checking out my Spoopathon October TBR, which is a readathon I'm taking part in, hosted by Spoopy Hall, and it's a bunch of books that can have an autumnal feeling, spooky feeling, or spoopy, which I learned is like cute spooky. So yes, excited for that month to start and to read some spoopy books. Also, I'm over on social media, so feel free to head over to my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages where you'll find a lot more bookish content that you won't find here. All right, so today we are going over my September reads. So this month was all about Becca's Bookoplathon. So I had chosen books based off my roles on a Monopoly board that is bookish themed. So I'll go through, didn't read all of them. I read 5 out of the 6 in print form, and then I had some other books I needed to read for a buddy read, and then one that I continued in from August. So I wasn't able to complete the Bookoplathon, so I guess I lost at Bookopoly or Monopoly. I don't think I've ever played a game of actual Monopoly all the way through, so what happens when you lose? When you win, you get all the money, right? When you lose for Bookopoly, nothing happens, which is great. I liked the format of it. I probably will do something like that for the month of December when I choose my reads there, unless there's a fun winter, Christmas, holiday themed readathon or reading challenge for the month of December. If not, I will do the Bookopoly board again. But yes, since October will be the Spoopathon and November will be Nonfiction November, which I've already have a TBR set for that. And yeah, the one exception, you'll see if you watch that video when it comes out in November and end of October, will be Tell the Bees I've Gone Home in the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. That comes out like the week of Thanksgiving. So that is my plan, Thanksgiving break, is to read that book and like finally be ahead of what this world is all about. I feel like I've always been behind and I've always had to shield myself from spoilers. Not anymore, yes. But anyway, that is for another video. So I'll go over in my always fully booked planner. So side note, the 2022 version of this journal, this reading journal, will be launched, I believe, October 8th. So if you're watching this as it comes out on October, I think that's the 4th? 3rd or 4th, which is a Monday, you'll have the chance to purchase this book from Little Inklings Design. I'll put a link down below, but she has 2 different color choices or cover choices for next year. A few of the pages are changed out, but I'll link to the launch or the flip through video where she shows you everything about the new journal and then goes over more details about ordering and like all that kind of stuff. But I have filled out my September read page. So this includes books read, some reading stats, and what I'm currently loving. And I will say I am still on my book buying ban, but I did have a bookish haul and it's not my fault. Well, some of it is. They were not purchased. A few of them were Little Free Library finds that I'm like, I cannot pass these up because you don't know when they'll be back. And so they included Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, Infinite Country, and then Tales from the Cafe, which is the sequel to Before the Coffee Gets Cold. So needed that. And then Harper Perennial was kind and they hosted a giveaway on Instagram, which I won. Me and my friend actually both won it, which is pretty cool. And they sent Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. So that was my haul. 4 books, not too bad, I will say. But in terms of books read, I read 12 for this month, which were 7 print and 5 audiobooks. Yes, and then let's see, number of pages read, 3,993. Genres read include contemporary, historical fiction, young adult, thriller, and sci-fi. What I'm currently loving is Once Upon a Time, which is an amazing TV show that was back, I think, 2011 to 2018. And it's where all these fairy tale characters are living in like the real world and they don't know who they are. There's a curse that put on them. And then this one girl has to save them because she is a child of Snow White and Prince Charming. So that we're on, I think, season 2, which is pretty cool. We're getting introduced to Mulan and a few other characters, Captain Hook. So yes, I've already seen it all the way through. This will be my second time watching it, hopefully all the way through again. So catching things I might have missed the last time. And Red Wine, I'm really loving. The Comet to Your Coffee. So it comes as like a frozen coffee, like K-cup pods, and then you melt them ahead of time before you make your coffee and like pour hot water on them or something. And you can make iced coffee, lattes, hot coffee, whatever you'd like. So yeah. And then long runs. So I will be running the virtual Boston Marathon in a few weeks. So by the time you see this, I will be running it this upcoming weekend. So wish me luck. And yes, I am very nervous. I haven't ran a marathon in a very long time. So I know I'll be doing a lot of run walks, but lately it's been cool to be able to, it's like how the schedule is set is you run Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like quote unquote shorter runs, and then you do a long run on Saturday or Sunday. So as I've been increasing my long runs, my short runs have also been increasing like slowly. So now I'm up to 7 to 8 miles during like the weekday per day. And then last weekend I ran 15. Hopefully at this point I would have ran 18 the weekend before you're seeing this, and then going up to 26.2. So I don't know, it's been kind of cool to see that progress. I know I'm never going to win a marathon or qualify for anything special, but it's a really cool accomplishment, and that's something that I love about myself right now, is having that somewhat of a discipline and just seeing the progress in the distance of how much I'm running. So those are little of the updates from this past month. Also, if you didn't know, I do have a monthly newsletter that goes out at the beginning of each month where I go through the books that I've read and then some fun links to things and like a more detailed update of my life, as well as the posts from BookTube and on my blog. So if you want to sign up for that, just head over to my website, incessantbookworm.com, and it'll get you squared away. All right, so to the books. So the first book I finished is All the Ever Afters by Danielle. So this I had started reading when I was down in Asheville for my reading retreat, which is super fun, and just continued it into the month of September. So this I absolutely love. It's a retelling of Cinderella's stepmother, and it doesn't focus on like what we know as the story of Cinderella. Like if you watch the movie or whatever, it goes into the backstory of the stepmother, and even in the future after the prince and Cinderella get married and everything. So I thought this was amazing. It made me believe in seeing the good in people, that there's two sides to every story, and what other kind of villains' backstories don't we know that will be super interesting with what we've been told or what we've watched with like Disney movies and things like that. So this was very, very good. This was recommended to me by Liz at Read by the Color when we went to the Cincy Library Friends, and she said like, hey, I think you would like this. And I'm like, okay, cool. And yeah, she was not wrong. So on to one of the Becca's Bookoplathon books. So this is A Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and this was the Greek mythology retelling, or a retelling of some sort. And this surprised me. I had seen this all over the place. It's on Book Talk. It's on like so many bestseller lists or whatever. And I'm like trying to not dive into too many like bandwagon, like everybody's read this book kind of things, but I thought this was interesting because I had listened to Circe, which I don't think has gotten as much hype, and I liked the style of Madeline Miller's writing and like bringing in contemporary issues and things like that into the storyline. So this follows Achilles and Patroclus as they kind of like go through, they're kind of like coming of age together, getting ready for Troy and like the Trojan horse and all that kind of stuff, if you're familiar with like the Odyssey and like Helen of Troy and all that drama. So this is an LGBTQ read, and it's beautiful, like astonishing. It is worth the hype, I will say. I also read this for the Late Night Book Club's pick. I can't remember what month they did this in, but I like read it after they had streamed it live on YouTube. So yes, pretty amazing book. Another prompt for Bookoplathon that I landed on was my least rated book on my TBR. So this book, Balcony of Fog by Rich Shapero, was rated I think 1.5 or 2 stars on Goodreads, I think. So pretty low. And most people I think at that point would have DNF'd it. I continued to read it. It wasn't that long. It was probably what, like 200 pages or so. Yeah, just over 200 pages. It's a sci-fi esque, maybe post-apocalyptic combo of a book. I just felt, and like I struggled with it, and I wondered if it was because I knew the rating ahead of time and I kind of like formed in my mind what I was going to think of it, or I guess or the storytelling was kind of all over the place. There wasn't a lot of character development. Yeah, so this, unfortunate, because I would have loved to be able to say, oh, like this is a read that you haven't heard of or something like that you need to check out. But for me personally, it was not. The next prompt from Becca's Bookoplathon that I landed on was a mood read. And this At the time of picking it, I had interpreted it as, you know what, like, I just feel like reading this book. It wasn't like I want a sad read, a happy read, whatever. It was just I just feel like it, let me pick this up. So this is The Storied Life of AJ Fickery by Gabrielle Zevin. 5 out of 5 stars. So good. Probably one of my favorite books about books, I guess like fiction wise, this year and maybe of all time that I've read. This follows a like curmudgeon bookseller in New England who one day is like has like a baby dropped off into his store and like decides to take care of it because the mother abandoned it, and then things start to change for the good. He's learning to adapt and like be one with the community because he kind of kept to himself. He did like day to day, went through the motions so much and was like not really inspired or motivated to do anything. And a lot of his stock in his bookstore were like very specific, like I don't like young adult, I don't like books with these kind of covers, I only like classics, I only like murder mystery. Like it was very nuanced, which is fine for like genre stores, but I think it was hurting his store and his bottom line and everything. But yes, such good storytelling about transformation, community, family, in whatever way that looks like. So so many emotions with this one. Another one for Becca's Bookoplathon was an LGBTQ read. So this, I'd only known that it was an LGBTQ read from Bookstagram, Book Talk reviews that I've read before. So this is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this, I remember talking about in my TBR video that it's hard, at least for me, to know if a story is going to be focused on LGBTQ issues or people, or the writer is. So I struggled with picking it, but I only picked this one because I knew that it had content related to what I wanted. So yes, and I'm glad I picked it up. This is a fantastic read, and it just goes through, oh my gosh, like what sacrifices people make, how people manipulate other people, especially in like the cinema or cinematic film world in Hollywood, or like old Hollywood. It was very cool. I loved hearing about the fashion, like her different relationships, the motivations behind all of her marriages. And yes, this was also a late night book club pick, and they did, I think this was their first one actually last year. So yeah, again, backlist for their videos, but I actually love this one. And Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of my favorite authors. I just saw One True Loves is going to be adapted, and they've already announced part of the cast, and they just announced somebody else last week. So that book was like heartbreaking for sure. So she does a really good job of like developing her characters, making us like feel that we are a part of them and like are invested in their story, and very similar to here. So a different buddy read that I was participating in was In With the Old Book Club. So this is over on Instagram, and their pick for September was Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. So this, as like one of the subtitle things, it says a novel of the plague, which is true, but it's so much bigger than that. So I didn't realize this goes into like a fictional retelling-ish of William Shakespeare's family. So him as a character in this book is nameless, I think pretty much the whole time. So it's not really focused on him, which we know the name, we know his stories and plays and all that kind of stuff. So we learn about his family and his set of twins, which includes Hamnet and Judith, and then his older daughter, Susanna, as well as his wife. So yeah, it's amazing. It's like the plague does affect the family, but it's really a focus on like their family and like his aspirations. What does that sacrifice look like while he's in London developing all these plays, and people are like doubting him, and then his family's kind of struggling back home and dealing with this plague stuff. So it is pretty emotional, I will say. The first 100 pages were kind of slow, but then it picked up as more and more things were happening in the plot. So pretty good. I think I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Last print book I read for the Becca's Bookoplathon was On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. So this served as a hyped book. And this one I think is like not as big as hyped, but I've seen it so many times that I considered it hyped. and it's well deserved for sure. It is a beautiful lyrical contemporary fiction story of this main narrator who is writing a letter to his mom, who is illiterate. So, and they came from Vietnam and had lived there for a while, moved to America, and are dealing with diversity, with language barriers, with adjusting and acclimatizing potentially. What does that look like in different situations where they don't understand, like with American schools, in different stores, with hospitals, things like that. So I thought it was very interesting, very poignant, and beautiful for sure. And he's coming out with a collection of poems, I think, next year. So be on the lookout for that. So now we're coming to the audiobooks. I read 5. So the first one was Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. So this goes through a young Asian American woman, I think she's in California, who finds out who her dad is, and he's like a prince in Japan. And so she's basically royalty, and she flies over there and learns like, oh wow, like I'm not necessarily not welcome there, but I have a lot to learn if I want to like be a part of my father's new life and like his new family, and want to embrace these roots of my Japanese heritage. So that I thought was pretty cool, like of her kind of navigating what that looks like, and also putting, so like understanding what the customs and the language is or are, and then putting her own spin and personality into it. So it's congealing or combining both of who she is into this remarkable young woman. So that I thought was pretty cool. And I think they have a sequel coming out for that one too. Okay, the next audiobook was The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris. So this was another hyped up book, and I bumped it up. I think I had a 3.5 or 4 star. And the more I think about it, I'm like, I think that might have been too generous. I think like 3.5, I think is fine. I think 4 would have been too much for me. So this follows this black woman who's in like a publishing house. She's the only black woman there until one day another black woman shows up, and they like kind of form a bond, form that kind of community where you can, especially when you are in a place that's majority white people, or like just not people that look like you. So the problem is that she's been working so hard and like trying to get promoted and everything, and then this other girl comes in and is like winning people over, and it's kind of like a competition between the two, but they're kind of like playing each other and all that. So it is a thriller, which I'm like, how in the world is this a thriller? She does start getting like threatening notes to like leave the industry or like leave the publishing house before it's too late, blah blah blah. And then we find out like what's been going on and why people are liking this other girl more. And it's very interesting. I don't know if the execution of it was done well, or like how people were responding to this new girl. I don't want to like give away the ending at all. I'm just like, oh, like that's an interesting way to approach assimilation, acclimatizing, and like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. I think it does talk about like race, stereotypes, all that stuff. I think it was just like a whoa, didn't see that coming, but I don't know if that was a good or bad thing. At first I'm like, I'm so confused, and I had to read a bunch of reviews and summaries to understand like, wait, what just happened? So that I think is why I brought it down a little bit. And then once I understood, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's fine. But definitely interesting to read, different approach to writing for sure, and like a thriller as it comes to race. Then I listened to Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. So this is the sequel to The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which I absolutely loved. I think I gave this one also a 5 out of 5 stars. This one's a little bit darker than the first one. So this follows Pip in, I think, Connecticut or somewhere in New England, where she takes on like this project for her senior capstone, investigating, or not really investigating, but just like asking questions and everything, not to like lead to a solution or to like solve the mystery or whatever, but it turns into that. And so she develops a podcast, and in this version, or this second book, the podcast is like helpful to her investigation of a different crime, of kidnapping that's happened in her town, where she is battling with like, should I get involved? Should I not? Like, it was draining mentally. It put my family in danger and myself, but she ultimately decides to do it, and then goes from there. So there is a third book. I think it's the last one. So it is a trilogy. I think it's called As Good as Dead. So that is on my reserved holds list, and I cannot wait to listen to it. The last two books on audio were like contemporary romance. So the first one was In 5 Years by Rebecca Serle. So this I was afraid was going to be like a 13 going on 30 kind of thing where it's like, oh, she goes to bed, wakes up X amount of time later and like is in this whole world, doesn't understand what's happening. So that does happen where it's fast forwarded 5 years. And she's in this apartment she's never seen. She's with a guy she's never seen before, and she like picks up clues, and then she is suddenly transported back to where she was originally. So I'm like, okay, that's a little bit different. So it's her pretty much going throughout this whole book of not getting that fate or like being curious about that fate, but also trying to fight it because it could mean some bad things for her best friend and her fiance. So very interesting. I feel like I gave that one a 4.5 stars as well because it was just different. And like, thankfully it didn't follow the same storyline as 13 going on 30, but it had more serious tones of friendships, loyalty, and honesty. Last book just finished today was A Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. And this was like a nice, I would say like a beachy read, light read. I gave it 3.5 stars. This follows two folks. They both work at a retirement home, or one guy just comes in because his father owns the retirement home, like the whole company that are all over the place, and they just work in this one together. The main female, she is kind of like OCD a little bit and knows it because of something that's happened in her past, and this other guy is like go with the flow, is a tattoo artist, doesn't stress about anything at all. So that I thought was pretty interesting to put those two types of characters together and see some sparks fly and see what happens with the fate of the retirement home, their relationship, and how they change and grow together. So that concludes my wrap up for September. Lots of good books there. The best book I didn't mention, I feel, is All the Ever Afters, because it was so unique and so unexpected, and one I haven't really seen too much around, and I've seen somebody else pick it up because of my recommendation, so that makes me super happy as well, putting books in readers' hands that may not have heard of them before or is like unexpected. Anywho, that pretty much does it for me. I have a few vlogs coming up that I'm excited about. Next week will be, I think I said this last week, next week will actually be the gift guide for different like bookish items. I've already filmed it, but I wanted to do the TBR first since it's the beginning of the month of October for September's reading. So the gift guide will be coming out, and then I have some book lists. If you like this, read that kind of thing. But yes, that is pretty much it for me. I am excited to jump into the October Spoopathon reading challenge. I already have my books picked out for that. I'm going to start with Anna Karenina, which is kind of on a stricter schedule of finishing that by the end of the month, and then Sometimes I Lie. I think the author's name is Alice Feeney. So be on the lookout on my Instagram page mainly for updates on how that is going. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below what you read for the month of September, what you thought of the books. If you have read them or are intrigued by the ones that I shared, let me know that. You can hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when I post next, usually on Mondays. I skipped last week. I am so sorry, but it was just nuts with everything that was happening. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I hope you have a great day and happy reading.